I have never been the kind of person who feels at home in nature. The idea of sleeping on dirt while bugs march over my face is not what I consider peaceful. But every summer, my father would drag me into the woods with his rugged friends. They all treated camping like a sacred ritual, while I silently counted the hours until it was over. By the time I was in high school, I was desperate for any way to make the experience less miserable. So I convinced my dad to let me bring a friend. Surprisingly, he agreed. I chose Charles, a guy who actually liked camping but wasn't annoying about it. The trip didn't start right. One of my dad's friends messed up the reservation, and instead of a peaceful forest, we ended up at a crowded, artificial-looking campground. There were paved paths, glowing lampposts, even a playground right next to the tents. Worst of all, just beyond a fence, was a mini amusement park. Bright lights, roller coasters, carnival music. It felt wrong, like two different realities stitched together. Charles joked it wasn't real camping. My dad was furious, but we stayed. Later that night, after smoking a little to take the edge off, Charles looked at the glowing park in the distance and said, "Let's explore." We climbed over the fence. The moment our feet hit the other side, the sounds changed. The laughter, the music. It didn't fade, but transformed. It slowed, like a record dragging to half speed. The lights flickered, turning from carnival colors to a sickly pale hue, as though the bulbs were filled with dying breath instead of electricity. "Dude, is this place even open?" I whispered. We walked further. No people, no staff. But the rides were moving. The Ferris wheels spun slowly. The carousel turned with lifeless horses, frozen in mid-scream, teeth bared instead of smiling. Then we noticed the signs. They didn't advertise cotton candy or roller coasters. They said things like, "Please don't look up. You are being measured. If they notice you, pretend to be dead." Charles tried to laugh it off, but his voice cracked. "They probably do this to scare kids." That's when we heard the footsteps. Not from one direction, but from everywhere. Soft, synchronized, like dozens of people walking in circles around us, hidden behind the walls and rides. I grabbed Charles's arm. "Hello," he called out. Every ride stopped. Dead silent. Then, above the Ferris wheel, something started to descend. At first I thought it was smoke, until I realized it had fingers, long, skinless fingers stretching down from the sky, like strings searching for something to pull. Charles whispered, "Don't move." We didn't. The fingers hovered above us, twitching, searching. Then, from underneath the carousel, a voice whispered my name, my real name, not loud, almost like someone gently blowing the word into my ear. I snapped. I pulled Charles and ran. The footsteps turned into thunder. The ground shook. We didn't look back. We vaulted the fence and fell onto the campground side. Silence. The amusement park was dark, completely dark. No lights, no movement, just an empty lot. Charles was shaking. We didn't imagine that. We turned to walk back toward our tent. Except our tent was gone. Every tent was gone. The entire campground. Empty. Like nobody had ever been here at all. And behind us, on the other side of the fence, one single light flickered back on. Just one. a Ferris wheel cart at the very top, swinging like someone had just sat down. The train jerked forward, and that slight movement snapped me out of shock. My heart didn't just beat, it pounded like it was trying to shatter my ribs and escape my chest. My breath caught in my throat, refusing to move. It was as if the air around me had thickened, turning into something that couldn't be inhaled. My headphones slipped from my ears and dangled uselessly against my jacket as I stumbled backwards, nearly collapsing onto one of the cold metal seats. The clown didn't run. Running would have made him human. But this thing moved with a chilling calmness, taking slow, deliberate steps down the train aisle. Each step echoed not because of the shoes, but because of the silence. The kind of silence that makes every sound feel like it's stabbing directly into your nerves. He dragged the tip of his knife along every surface he passed. Scrub, scrub. The metal-to-metal scraping was so sharp it felt like invisible claws were carving their way across my bones. There were no other passengers, no witnesses, just me and him. The overhead lights flickered, casting long shadows that stretched and twisted across the floor, like dark hands reaching for me. My lips moved before my mind could catch up. Stay away, I whispered, but even to my own ears it sounded like a dying plea. The clown didn't respond, not even with a breath. His painted smile was frozen in a grotesque grin, but his eyes were alive, and what lived inside them was not madness. It was intent. The train approached the next station, slowing as the doors prepared to open. That small change in motion sparked a desperate hope inside me. The moment the doors slid apart with a hiss, I bolted. My legs didn't feel like they were moving fast enough, yet the world around me blurred as I sprinted out of the train. But he moved faster. The rush of air as the knife cut past my chest was so close I could feel the cold of the blade without it touching me. My feet nearly slipped on the polished platform tiles, but some instinct I didn't know I had kept me upright. I didn't scream. Screaming would have wasted time. It would have made it real. Instead, I ran, lungs burning, heart bleeding fear into every vein, thoughts dissolving into static. But he followed. His footsteps didn't match his body. They were uneven, too heavy, too hollow, like someone stomping inside an empty coffin. Thud, tap, thud, tap. His breathing was worse. It wasn't human breathing. It wheezed and rattled like air being pushed through broken glass. Every time I turned a corner, I expected him to be gone, a figment of my imagination. But he wasn't gone. He was closer. The station was completely deserted. Every ticket booth shuttered. Every vending machine turned off. The overhead announcements that usually droned with monotonous voices were silent. Even the flickering lights above seemed to dim as I passed beneath them, as though the entire station was holding its breath. Up the first staircase, my legs ached. Up the second, my lungs screamed. The exit was just ahead, glowing like the last remaining portal to safety. That's when I heard it. A laugh. Not a clown laugh. Not goofy. Not exaggerated. It was broken, disconnected. A laugh that didn't know how to be a laugh, like someone forcing the sound out of a body that had forgotten how to be alive. My blood turned to ice. I turned despite every cell in my body begging me not to, and saw him standing at the bottom of the stairs, motionless, head tilted, watching me, like he already owned me. I crashed through the exit turnstile so hard it nearly snapped. My vision swam as I stumbled onto the street, gasping like a drowning man finally breaking through the surface of black water. 2 police officers stood near their patrol car, casually talking. I couldn't form words. I could only point behind me, shaking violently, lips trembling too much to shape a sentence. They followed my gaze. By the time they went down there, he was gone. Not a footprint, not a drop of blood, no wig, no knife. It was as if he had dissolved into the shadows the moment I left his sight. But shadows don't disappear. They follow. And I know something with absolute certainty. A truth colder than anything I've ever felt. He saw my face. He heard my breath. He knows I survived. And whatever he is, he doesn't forgive survival. It was an ordinary Thursday, second period, when the school PA crackled to life with an icy, almost mechanical voice. Lockdown, locks, lights out. The words repeated cold and unnatural, sending a shiver down every spine in the classroom. Mrs. Danbury froze mid-sentence, chalk hovering in the air, her eyes widening with disbelief. Students murmured nervously, the shuffle of feet and the scrape of chairs against the linoleum floor echoing ominously. My friend Colin leaned close, whispering, "Is this real?" I shook my head, gripping my knees, heart hammering in my chest. They'd tell us if it was just a drill. This feels wrong. A low hum began outside, growing louder by the second, like the rotors of a helicopter circling directly above. The hum was soon punctuated by a sudden, sharp bang from the hallway, followed almost instantly by the staccato roar of automatic gunfire. I clamped my hands over my ears, the screams of my classmates slicing through the deafening chaos. Some girls whispered prayers with trembling lips. A few boys sat frozen, wide-eyed, silent and pale. Every second stretched into an eternity, each echoing shot tearing at our sense of safety. The gunfire paused briefly, replaced by a high-pitched, inhuman wail that made my stomach twist violently, as though some dark force was turning my insides inside out. I glanced at Mrs. Danbury. Her face had drained of all color, eyes wide and fixed on the doorway, as if hypnotized by some unspeakable horror. The shots returned, faster, more erratic this time, punctuated by the sickening thud of bodies colliding with lockers. A sudden silence fell, a fragile, breathless pause, but it was broken by the thunderous crash of the classroom door. A SWAT officer flew through it, slamming into a desk with unnatural force. His back arched painfully. His arm hung at an impossible angle. A low moan escaped his lips before he lay still, eyes staring at nothing. For a brief moment, we thought the nightmare was over. Mrs. Danbury crawled forward toward the door, each motion deliberate yet terrified. My instincts screamed for me to stop her, but fear had cemented me to the floor. She peered around the doorway, and what she saw froze her in place. A monstrous arm, clawed and twisted, descended from above and wrapped around her neck. Her scream was cut short as she was dragged violently out of sight. Moments later she reappeared, staggering back into the doorway, blood pouring from deep gashes across her torso, her arms torn away. Her face was dazed, half horrified, half determined, as she attempted to flee the nightmare unfolding in the hall. Then it appeared. The creature was a grotesque fusion of scorched fur, sinew, and limbs, bent in unnatural ways, like a bear and a baboon stitched together in a nightmare. Its eyes glowed with an intelligence that no wild animal should possess. It lunged at her with a terrifying speed. The two collided, crashing through the shattered window, plummeting to the ground below. Silence fell like a suffocating blanket, broken only by the heavy, terrified breaths of the remaining students pressed against the wall. None dared move, each of us paralyzed by fear, the air thick with the metallic scent of blood and terror. Minutes passed, or perhaps hours. Time seemed meaningless. Then, distant gunfire signaled that help was finally approaching. Slowly, shakily, we crept from our hiding spots. The hallway was a scene from hell. Bodies scattered, lockers ripped from their hinges, blood pooling in dark, sticky puddles across the floor. A few brave classmates helped guide us toward the evacuation point, trembling, crying, some in silent shock. Police and emergency responders finally took over, securing the school and ushering us outside. Later, the news reported an escaped zoo bear, but we knew the truth. That was no ordinary animal. Its movements were intelligent, deliberate, almost calculating. Its strength, speed, and horrifying resilience were beyond nature itself. And the military research facility, not far from our school. It explained too much. We had survived that day, barely, but the memory stayed with us. A silent, terrifying truth. Something unnatural had walked our halls, and it was still out there, waiting. Senior year was supposed to be easy. Spring sunlight filtered through the classroom windows, warm and lazy, and for most of the day, everything seemed normal. But that Tuesday, something was off. Teachers moved oddly. Slow, deliberate motions, eyes glazed over, staring without focus. I shrugged it off at first, thinking maybe I was imagining it. The air smelled faintly metallic, almost sweet, like copper mixed with dust, and I realized even the usual hum of the fluorescent lights was different, lower, vibrating almost imperceptibly. At lunch, I went off campus with my friend Tom to grab a burger. "What's up with the teachers today?" he asked, chewing nervously. I described what I'd seen. Miss Delia forgetting how to spell basic words. Mr. Liu pacing unnaturally slowly, an odd smell clinging beneath his cologne. Tom nodded, confirming he noticed it too. Even small things like Miss Delia's messy hair, smudged makeup, and a faint tremor in her hands hinted at a strange shift in behavior. It was subtle, but everyone who noticed it felt that chill running down their spine. We returned just in time for second period. Then the alarm sounded. Lockdown. At first, I thought it was a drill. Mrs. Santiago smiled, almost knowingly. "We're doing something different today," she said. Half the class would stay in the room, the other half would follow her elsewhere. Unease churned in my stomach. If there were a real threat, why split the class? The hallways seemed darker than usual, shadows stretching along the lockers like claws. I lined up with the others. As we moved through the darkened hallways, I noticed blood trailing down Mrs. Santiago's arm, just above her elbow. A bad feeling tightened my chest, a pit of fear that refused to calm. The gym doors loomed ahead, dark and silent. Students entered first, murmuring warnings. The teachers were waiting, a dozen of them forming a corridor, silently, impossibly. Their faces were familiar yet twisted, as if a mask had been pulled over their humanity. Then the attack began. Knives, cleavers from the school kitchen, glinting under the faint flashlight beams. Screams erupted. I froze, pressed against the wall, heart hammering. A cold hand grabbed my shoulder. I swung and connected with a face. The grip released, but more horror waited. Mrs. Santiago approached, her face twisted, mouth bleeding, eyes empty like bottomless pits. I fought her off, and in the struggle her arm tore from my grasp. I ran, heart in my throat, watching chaos unfold around me. The smell of iron filled the air, and the metallic scent mingled with sweat and fear. I reached Tom's classroom and rapped on the door. He let me in. We explained what we'd seen. Many students had noticed the strange behavior but had stayed frozen, too afraid to move. We had to escape. Even in the classroom, shadows seemed to move against the walls, and the faint whispers of indistinct voices drifted through cracks under the door. As we moved toward the faculty area, a flickering orange glow shone from the teacher's lounge. Peeking through the window, I saw Vice Principal Ben Sheridan floating midair, limbs outstretched, a wooden spear through his chest. Orange light spilled from his eyes and mouth. Strange red symbols pulsed on the floor and walls, incomprehensible and terrifying. The air was thick, almost solid, each breath tasting like ash and fire. I felt my knees weaken. We barely processed it before Christina Henry, an art teacher, appeared. Calm, controlled, holding a gun. She had a check mark next to her name on the faculty attendance list. She intended to stop us. I flung a heavy desk award at her, narrowly avoiding the gunfire. Tom ducked behind me. Fear and adrenaline drove every move. The fluorescent lights flickered, casting dancing shadows over the walls, making each corner a potential death trap. We navigated the halls, the lockdown alarm blaring, windows chained. The teachers, our mentors, our authority figures, were no longer human. We had to find a way out. Every step revealed more grotesque scenes. Empty classrooms, dark hallways, silent students trapped or worse. The school had become a cage, and we were prey. Doors that should have been unlocked refused to budge, and somewhere in the distance, a bell tolled slowly, echoing, though no one had rung it. It was as if the building itself was alive, conspiring against us. Eventually we located a potential exit. Each corridor, each door, reminded us that the teachers weren't themselves. They were instruments of something far darker, something deliberate. Whoever orchestrated this had planned it meticulously. That day I learned that the familiar could turn monstrous in an instant, and survival meant relying on instinct, courage, and the trust of those few who stayed with me. Shadows moved along the walls as if watching, and the silence between the chaos felt heavier than the screams. We escaped, shaken and forever changed. The school remained, silent and ominous, holding its secrets behind locked doors. The orange glow faintly visible in some windows, pulsing like a heartbeat we could never hear again. Even after surviving that terrifying lockdown, I couldn't shake what I had seen. The halls of my school, once familiar and safe, had transformed into a nightmare etched into memory. A place where every step felt heavy with dread. Bodies were strewn across the corridors, classrooms drenched in blood, and the impossible creature that had chased our teacher haunted every thought. News reports called it an escaped zoo bear, but I knew better. That was no bear. Nothing I had seen moved or thought like a normal animal. Its presence was unnatural, a terrifying blend of strength, intelligence, and malice that defied reason. Weeks passed, but the fear lingered like a shadow, dark and persistent. Every sound, every sudden movement in the quiet triggered memories of that day. I began noticing subtle details I had missed in the chaos. The creature's eyes, intelligent and calculating, glinting with an almost human awareness. Its movements precise and deliberate, unlike any wild animal. Its smell, acrid, chemical, and unnatural, like burnt metal mixed with something organic. It wasn't simply a wild animal. It was engineered, designed to hunt, and it had escaped control. The military research facility near our town became impossible to ignore. Rumors had always whispered of experiments, of genetic manipulation, of things no civilian was meant to witness. The coincidence was too strong to dismiss. What we had faced in the school was likely the result of a failed project, a predator unlike anything intended to exist. The thought that human hands had created such a monster made it even more terrifying. Nightmares consumed my sleep. I would wake in the dark, certain I could hear claws scraping concrete, a low guttural growl vibrating the floor beneath my bed. Every shadow in my room seemed to twist unnaturally, forming shapes that lingered just beyond the reach of light. Friends tried to reassure me, but none had been in that classroom, pressed against the wall, watching life and sanity unravel before them. We knew the truth, and it isolated us, silently bonding us through terror. We formed an unspoken pact. Never speak of that day. Not to parents, not to the authorities, not even to other students. The public version, an escaped bear, was safe, comforting, and plausible. The real story, the truth, was far too dangerous. If anyone knew, they might not believe us. Or worse, the facility might intervene to hide the evidence, and we could vanish without a trace. That thought alone sent shivers down my spine. Still, life went on. We returned to classes, to hallways, to the routines of high school. But every PA announcement, every emergency drill, made our hearts hammer. The creature, or something like it, had escaped into the world, and it could be anywhere. Waiting, we watched each other's backs, our group shrinking and growing closer in shared knowledge and silent understanding. Every day carried a subtle tension, a quiet dread that the world outside our classrooms had changed irreversibly. Even today, years later, I can't walk past the research facility without a chill crawling up my spine. Every step toward it is a reminder that the events weren't random. The lockdown, the teachers, the impossible predator, they were all connected. Somewhere deep inside, I know we only survived because the creature had rules, limitations, and because we had the luck, courage, and instinct to exploit them. The memory of it, however, never fades. It lingers in the corners of my mind, in the whispers of the wind, in the quietest moments of solitude. The fear never fully leaves. It hides behind normalcy, lurking in empty classrooms, in shadowed corners of parking lots, in the quiet hum of a PA system. And we will always remember, those of us who lived, the night our school became a hunting ground. The predator we faced wasn't just an animal. It was a nightmare given flesh, a creation of human arrogance and unchecked ambition. And that nightmare will never forget us, just as we will never forget it. My name is Aaron, and what I'm about to share still makes my skin crawl. This happened 3 winters ago, when I was 15. It was around 6:30 in the morning, sky still dark, rain falling like a whisper against the pavement. Usually, I loved the cold breeze when I walked to the bus stop. But that day, from the second I stepped out of my house, I felt something was deeply wrong. It was like the world had paused. The street, normally filled with cars and early commuters, was disturbingly quiet. Even the birds didn't make a sound. It felt like I had walked into a place I wasn't supposed to be. I adjusted my backpack and kept my head down, trying to ignore the icy wind biting my cheeks. When I reached the bus stop, it was empty. That had never happened before. There were always 3 or 4 other students waiting at that exact time, talking, laughing, complaining about school. But the bench was wet and deserted. For a moment, I thought maybe I was too early. I checked my phone. I was right on time. So where was everyone? Then I noticed the silence. No cars, no footsteps, just the rain. That's when I heard the sound of an engine. Slow, crawling, coming from behind. I turned my head slightly, and my heart nearly stopped. A large, old, off-white passenger van was slowly pulling up to the curb, about 10 meters away from me. All its windows were covered from the inside with a dark fabric, like bed sheets or curtains. The paint was peeling, rust eating away at the corners. The van halted, engine still rumbling like it was breathing. Behind the wheel was an older man, gray hair sticking out from under a dirty cap, sunken cheeks, eyes that didn't blink. He was staring directly at me, not just looking, staring. I froze. My instinct screamed at me to move, to run, but I couldn't. It was as if his eyes had pinned me to the ground. He didn't roll down his window. He didn't speak. He just stared. Then, slowly, the corner of his lips curled into a faint smile. Not a friendly one. A smile that felt like it wasn't meant to be seen. A smile of someone who had already made a decision. Rainwater dripped from my hair into my eyes, but I didn't dare blink. My hands shook as I pretended to check my phone. The bus was already 5 minutes late. I wanted to cry. Every second felt like a minute stretching into eternity. The van's engine grew louder as it inched closer. 1 meter, 2 meters, 3. My breath became shallow. I clenched my jaw, ready to sprint. Then I heard a sound that nearly made my knees buckle. Click. The van's door had unlocked. He was going to open it. My heart pounded against my ribs so hard that it hurt. I didn't think. I moved. Just as I took a step back, I saw lights in the distance. My bus. Yellow. Real. Safe. I ran forward, waving my arm wildly, almost slipping on the wet footpath. The driver opened the doors before the bus fully stopped, probably seeing the terror on my face. I jumped inside and turned my head just in time to see the van's door slightly open before slamming shut again. The man's face was blank now. No smile, no emotion, as if I never existed. The van slowly reversed, then turned away in the opposite direction and disappeared behind the trees. I sat down, shaking so badly that another student asked if I was sick, but I couldn't speak. My throat was dry. I just kept staring out the window, expecting that van to return. It never did. The next day I took a different route. I never went back to that bus stop again. And even now, whenever I hear the low rumble of an engine in the rain, I still see that smile. And I still wonder, if the bus had been 1 minute later, would I still be alive to tell this story? My name is Elena, and I still wish that day had never happened. I was 13 at the time, living in a quiet suburban neighborhood that everyone called safe. Safe. That's what we always believed. That's what our parents believed too. But that day proved how quickly safety can become an illusion. It was the beginning of summer break. Hot air shimmered above the pavement, cicadas buzzing in every tree. My two best friends, Chloe and Mia, had come to my house, each bringing their favorite stuffed toys. We were obsessed with the idea of playing house like we had when we were younger. Mia brought a tiny cat doll, Chloe had her rabbit, and I had my old brown teddy bear. We set everything up in my backyard. Tiny plates, pretend food made of leaves and flowers, a makeshift bed made out of a shoebox. We were laughing so loudly that we didn't even hear the first time it happened. The sound of footsteps on gravel, slow, heavy, crunch, crunch. I looked toward the back fence expecting to see a neighbor, maybe someone checking their garden. But there was no one. The alley behind my house was empty. Chloe joked that it was probably a cat. We laughed it off and kept playing. 20 minutes later, Mia suggested we go find food for our stuffed animals. We ran down the side of my house and into the alley, picking berries from a bush that grew near the fence. The air suddenly felt heavier, as if someone was standing right behind us. Then Mia froze. She didn't say a word. She just lifted her hand weakly and pointed toward the far end of the alley. A man was standing there, not walking, not moving, just standing, watching us. He wore a dark jacket even though it was hot, his head slightly tilted as if confused or curious. A chill slithered down my spine. My heart began to race, thudding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Chloe whispered, "Maybe he needs directions." But before any of us could react, he started walking toward us. Slow steps, one after another, never breaking eye contact. Mia trembled. "Let's go," she whispered. We started walking back, but the man spoke. "Where are your parents?" We didn't answer. "Come here, I just need to ask you something." We turned and started running. I could hear his footsteps speeding up behind us. Chloe nearly tripped. I grabbed her arm. We sprinted around the side of the house, hearts pounding, our stuffed animals falling from our hands. We stumbled into the backyard and slammed the sliding door shut. Mia locked it with shaking hands. Silence. For a moment, we thought maybe we imagined it. But then, a shadow passed by the fence. We pressed our faces to the glass and saw the man standing there, right beyond the fence, his hand resting on the wood, tapping lightly. Tap, tap, tap. He tilted his head again, then smiled. Not a friendly smile, a smile that said he was enjoying this. We backed away from the door. I wanted to scream for my mom, but no words came out. Then suddenly the tapping stopped. He was gone, or so we thought. 10 minutes later, my mom came rushing downstairs after the doorbell rang, non-stop. Someone had been jamming the button. She opened the front door, expecting a neighbor, but no one was there. The security camera footage showed him. The same man. He had walked up to our porch, stared into the camera, smiled directly at it, then rang the bell repeatedly, as if he wanted to be let in. Police were called, but he was never found. That night I held my teddy bear close, too afraid to sleep. I realized something terrifying. He didn't want to rob us. He didn't want to ask a question. He wanted us. And somewhere out there, he still does. My name is Ria. I'm 18 now. But what happened last year still feels like a nightmare that refuses to end. People say family is your safe place. Your blood protects you. But I learned that sometimes the scariest monsters are the ones who share your last name. My cousin Noor was the same age as me. Everyone adored her. She was beautiful, intelligent, charming, almost unreal, like she stepped out of a magazine. But behind that perfect image, there was something wrong with her, something no one else seemed to notice. But I did. It started with the small things. I would catch her staring at people, not normal staring. She would watch them without blinking, like she was studying them, as if trying to understand how they worked. My aunt would laugh it off, calling it daydreaming, but I knew that wasn't it. Soon, Noor started sharing things with me. At first, harmless secrets, but then, darker ones. I broke the neighbor's dog's leg on purpose, she said one evening, casually eating an apple. I just wanted to see how long it would scream. I thought she was joking, until I saw the blood on her shoe. That was the first time I truly felt afraid of her. But I didn't tell anyone. She was family. What was I supposed to say? Who would believe me? Then everything escalated. One night during summer vacation, I was staying over at her house. Her parents had gone out of town, leaving us alone. We were in her living room watching TV, when suddenly she put her phone down and said calmly, "I think I'm going to ruin someone tonight." I laughed nervously, asking what she meant. She smiled at me, not like a human smiles, but like a predator revealing its teeth. "You'll see." She stood up and walked upstairs. I heard her rummaging in her parents' room. When she came back down, she was holding a bottle labeled poison. My blood froze. "Noor, what are you doing?" I asked, backing away. She tilted her head. "Don't worry, it's not for you." Then she leaned in closer. "Unless you tell anyone." That night I didn't sleep. I locked my bedroom door. I could hear her walking in the hallway, pacing, humming softly. Every few minutes she would stop in front of my door. Then tap, 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 as if reminding me she was still there, watching. The next morning, her housemaid collapsed while preparing breakfast. She survived, but the doctor said someone had tampered with her tea. Noor acted shocked, even cried fake tears, hugging the maid's daughter. But while everyone was distracted, she looked at me and winked. That was when I knew I had to leave before I became her next experiment. 3 days later, tragedy struck. Noor's parents died in a sudden house fire. The whole neighborhood mourned. The police said it was faulty wiring, but I knew better. I saw Noor standing outside the burning house, not crying, but smiling. That wasn't grief in her eyes. It was satisfaction. A week later, I confronted her. My voice trembled as I asked why. Why would she do this? She looked delighted that I had figured it out. "They were in the way," she whispered. "Now I'm free." I never visited her again. She now lives abroad with the distant relatives. Everyone says it's good she has a fresh start. But sometimes, at night, I still receive messages from an unknown number. No words, just photos. Photos of people sleeping, people who don't know she's watching them. And every time I see those messages, I remember her last words to me. "You're the only one who knows what I really am. And that makes you special. It means I'll never let you go."